The 5 U's of new British trains. These don't always apply to a new British train. Sometimes a new British train can have 4 of the U's apply to it, but not the 5th. Or maybe it's really lucky and only 1 of the U's applies. The U's are ugly, unreliable, unwanted, unnecessary, and uncomfortable. Let's start with ugly. A great many new British trains, at least those released in the last decade, tend to be quite ugly. Now, British trains as a rule tend to be ugly. I mean, you look at the Class 317, it's not exactly pretty, but it has its own certain unique charm to it. A 377 Electrostar is, I suppose that's actually a pretty good looking train. Certainly it's a memorable look. And a Class 700 City Desiro, or whatever it's called, well, it's fucking hideous. There, I said it. And it's not the only hideous train out there. The Class 745, or the entire Fleet family. The 717, which is not only ugly as sin because it's a Siemens Desiro City, but also because it doesn't have any yellow on its front. It might at least be a little bit attractive if it had a bit of yellow on the front, but it doesn't, because for some reason people seem to think that because a train has a slightly bright light at the front, that means it's exempt from a yellow front. No, British trains have yellow fronts. Put the yellow fronts on, you stupid idiots. Of course, liveries can help make a train look good or look ugly. The Class 68, for example, looks actually pretty good in direct rail services livery. But in first Transpennine Express livery, it's frankly just terrifying, especially without the yellow front, once again. Guys, like, seriously, put the yellow fronts on. It's not hard. And I'm not talking about a tiny little spot of yellow like you're seeing on this picture. I mean like proper yellow front, like on the DRS train you saw before. And finally, the Class 345s, which, you know, they're somewhat attractive, but the lack of a yellow front means that they could look better. The Class 710s have an orange front, which I'll give it a pass, because, you know, it at least looks proper somewhat. At least it's a somewhat bright coloured front. But now we go on to Unreliable, and we're sticking with those Bombardier adventures with the Class 345 yet again, because when those entered service, god, they were unreliable. I even found an old petition from back in the day when these were introduced, asking London Overground, or whoever owns these things, to force Bombardier to recall the brand new Class 345 trains until they are fit for service, because they were late into entering service, breaking down repeatedly, riddled with multiple faults, the doors refuse to close, the air conditioning is never on, the onboard information systems just fuzz out. Oh, and also, there's not enough seats, which is that goes with a U for uncomfortable though, so we'll talk about that later. And it wouldn't be Train Unreliable Central without a Statler Fleet. There's a comment on a Jeff Marshall's video from when these things were new or whatever. At the end of that video, there were a couple of Class 37s seen, and this guy comments that those 37s were there to rescue the 745s after the countless times that they've packed up in the last few months. Now, I suppose it's a good thing that I can't find that many cases of new trains being unreliable, but as I said, not all of the U's apply to all of the trains. That's just the way things work. You've got to be exceptionally unlucky to be a train that applies to all 5 U's, and at the moment I have not found a train that applies to all 5 of them, so I guess there's that. But now we move on to unnecessary. And we're going back to Stadler Fleets again. Now, the Class 90s and the Mark III coaches, sure, okay, they can't last forever. I'd love if they could, but apparently I don't think the parts are being made for them anymore, and they're gonna eventually fall apart. So they have to be replaced with something. Stadler Fleets, not it. But I'll tell you the story about a train called the Class 379. Now, the 379 is one of those Electrostar units, and they are my favourite Electrostars by far. They are supremely comfortable. At least the last time I was on one, it was really comfortable. It was nice and cool because it actually had air conditioning. 317s were really hot and stuffy all the time, or really stupidly cold. A 379, really nice and comfortable. And it's an Electrostar, so it looks pretty good as well. National Express East Anglia, they ordered these to replace older 317s on the Stansted Express route, and they really did that job quite well. And these trains are at most 10 years old, and Greater Anglia is replacing them already. For no other reason other than, it seems, for shits and giggles. Mind you, a train in Britain is typically designed to have at least a 30-year service life. Typically, it's about 40 years though. So, these trains are a quarter of the way through their lifespan, and Greater Anglia is replacing them because evidently they don't know how to actually run a train system. Because Greater Anglia is actually NS, or Nederlandse Spoorwegen, which is the Dutch train operating company, and according to my Dutch friend, they don't know how to operate the trains. Which says a lot. The 700s were also wildly unnecessary, because, well, we did have a whole bunch of Electrostars that were, you know, plying the Thames Link route, but for some reason, GTR, or whatever they want to call themselves these days, they decided to replace the Electrostars, or at least largely supplement them with these hideous, unnecessary Desiro cities, which are 12 carriages long regardless. And now we move on to uncomfortable, a sin that is held mainly by those Thameslink trains. Again, as mentioned before, the Class 345s are uncomfortable because they don't have enough seating. That means you're standing half the time. But the real prize for uncomfortable trains goes to pretty much everything operated by Govia Thameslink Railway. The Class 700s and the Class 717s, and even the Class 387s operated by the Gatwick Express have become renowned for their seats, which have gained the nickname of ironing boards. Whilst I have been spared the torture of sitting upon a Class 700 because I refuse to board one, I have unfortunately had to get on board a Gatwick Express Class 387 when the main line the line between Three Bridges and Brighton was closed, so I had to take a train through Littlehampton and up the Horsham line instead, and they were using a 387 Gatwick Express, and I had to sit on that seat for 2 hours at least. Yeah, I can't recommend it at all. It's really funny because the 387s under Gatwick Express are just hideously uncomfortable, but the 379s under Stansted Express are one of the most comfortable trains I ever travelled on. And they're both Electrostars. They're basically the same train, and yet one is I wouldn't want to travel on because it might kill my spine, and the other I'd practically turn into a house. And finally, the last U is one that is unfortunately a bit more subjective because people have opinions. The final U is unwanted, or I suppose can also mean unloved. The only trains I've mentioned in this video that I don't hate are the 317s, the 37s, and the 379s, and to some extent the 68s, but only under direct rail services. Everything else can be chucked on a scrap heap. Other trains that can go fuck themselves are the class 397, the class 707, maybe not the 720 because it actually has yellow on the front, but still jury is out on that one. The 755, basically everything that's a Stadler Fleet. 777, oh god, that is truly hideous, isn't it? The class 730, which hasn't even been entered service yet, I think. Like, god, help me, help me! Not sure about the Hitachi AT300 thingies, the bi-mode IETs, or whatever the fuck you want to call them. Not sure about all those. Oh, the 807, that one can go fuck itself, because it doesn't have a yellow front. Though that is more the fault of the livery and the train operating company, so maybe the train itself isn't too bad, but, you know, just make the fronts yellow and half of these trains will become instantly more attractive by about 100,000%. A Hitachi train that can go fuck itself, though, is the Class 385 AT200, which is, frankly, just... oh god, I think I'm gonna puke. Now, I understand it's mainly electric trains that I've mentioned in this video, but don't think that the diesels are exempt. I mean, I did mention the Class 68, that is sort of... I'm not really entirely sure on that one, but I do know that the 88 is that's sort of similar. As long as it has a yellow front, it's good, but as long as you don't put a yellow front on it, because it's got a bright light on it. Yeah, whoever makes that sort of decision, you can go fuck yourself. And hey, it turns out that the Stadler Fleets aren't just relegated to being electric trains. There's also the Class 231, which is a diesel Fleet. That can go be scrapped for all I care. A train that I don't actually hate is the Class 195. That's actually an attractive looking train. Like, it's actually a proper British train. It actually works. Like, wow. Like, it's funny because CAF, the manufacturers, produced an absolute trash heap in the 397. Or I think that's what it was. Yeah, 397. But the 195 is fantastic. Like, how do you make such an incredible train as the 195, but then absolutely completely cock up with the 397? And then there's the 331. That looks pretty good as well. What the hell? Oh god. It's just it's infuriating, isn't it? Oh, what else is there? I could swear there's something else that utterly sucks. More CAF trains. So CAF is weird because it looks like that they can produce some good looking trains, but also have a habit of producing bad looking ones as well. The oh god, the 196 is just, oh god, that is hideous. And the 197 looks like it's gonna be much the same. So yeah, this video did kind of end up being an episode of Rate the Train, but the point still stands. The 5 U's of new British trains. Ugly, Class 700. Unnecessary, Class 745, or you know, the one that's replacing the 379. Unreliable, Class 745 again. Uncomfortable, Class 700 again. And unloved, pretty much all of them. And I can guarantee that there's a bunch of people who are going to be looking at some of the trains on this video and this list, and they're going to think that they're the best thing since sliced bread, that they're amazing, incredible, and whatever, and they're so supremely comfortable, and they're the best looking things ever. And I say to you people, you're idiots.